She was just getting rid of the garbage when a pistol stopped her in her tracks. It happened in an instant. One moment, my daughter Emily was walking calmly down the driveway, the garbage bag swinging at her side like it weighed nothing. The next, she was nose to barrel with a pistol jammed against her chest. Frozen, breathless, face to face with the man no one dared cross in our neighborhood, Officer Greg Talbot, retired cop, self-declared enforcer, president of our homeowners association and Cedar Pines' very own one-man authority, armed and paranoid. He ran the neighborhood like a private security state, and no one, not even the mailman, felt safe when he was around. What Talbot didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that my daughter wasn't just some hoodie-wearing teenager taking out the trash. She wasn't just Emily, the quiet girl next door. She was deep undercover, part of a covert CIA youth division. Yes, a real one, embedded in plain sight. And Talbot. His name had just reached the top of a very serious federal watch list. Let me rewind. We moved to Cedar Pines 2 years ago. The place was like a postcard, manicured lawns, mailbox symmetry, porches proudly flying American flags. From the outside, it looked like a dream, like we had finally made it, but that dream was brittle. Peel back the paint, and the whole place had a different pulse. Something was off. The people were polite, too polite. They smiled with their teeth, but never their eyes. And then there was Talbot. Even after leaving the force, people still called him officer. He liked that. It gave him authority he no longer legally held but fully enforced. He measured lawns with rulers, documented trash can violations, and fined people for leaving Christmas decorations up a day too long. He patrolled the neighborhood in a golf cart that looked more like a miniature SWAT vehicle. Flashing lights, police stickers, a siren he'd wired himself. Most unsettling of all, he carried a gun. Always. And everyone let him. Why? Because we were afraid. Because no one wanted to be his next obsession, except Emily. My daughter was different. Brilliant, observant, and intense in ways that used to scare me until the day she sat me down and told me who she really was, or at least enough to keep me calm. She'd been recruited, trained, and activated by a teen operations unit under the CIA's civilian intel wing. Her current mission: monitor local authority figures suspected of civilian overreach and data abuse. Cedar Pines was a test site. Talbot was the nucleus. There had been whispers, files gone missing from his precinct, connections to private security contractors, shady surveillance operations buried in legal gray zones. The agency believed he was part of a rogue network of former law enforcement officers using suburban HOAs as cover for something much bigger. Emily? She was the agency's eyes. The morning everything shattered was a Saturday. Clear sky, no wind. The kind of morning where nothing should go wrong. But something did. Emily was walking to the curb with a trash bag when Talbot screeched around the corner in his golf cart. Tires squealed. He leaped out, gun drawn, shouting, "You think I don't notice what you're doing?" She didn't flinch. Not even an inch. "I'm just taking out the trash, sir," she said, her voice even, neutral. "Don't lie to me." His face twisted. "You're watching me. You've been recording me." That was when I bolted out the front door, my heart thudding in my throat. "Greg, what the hell are you doing?" He didn't blink. "She's been spying on me," he growled. "Who are you working for, girl?" Emily stared him down, calm and unshaken. And then, with a precision I didn't think a teenager could possess, she reached into her hoodie and pulled out a small black badge. Simple. Sleek. A symbol. No words. Talbot stopped breathing. His hand trembled. "You've been flagged for multiple federal surveillance infractions," she said, icy and direct. "I'm not your enemy, Greg, but my agency is very interested in what you've been doing." He saw it then. Not the badge. The truth. His posture sagged. His hand unbunched. He slowly holstered his weapon and took a step back. "This isn't over," he muttered before climbing into his cart and speeding off like a man who'd just glimpsed the Reaper. Emily turned to me. "We need to talk." That night, she laid it all out. Cedar Pines wasn't just a suburb. It was a controlled site, a living lab for ex-officers who'd banded together under the guise of HOA management to run covert digital surveillance programs. They were targeting undesirable elements: immigrants, LGBTQ+ couples, single parents like me, journalists, organizers. They had equipment, protocols, funding, and Talbot wasn't just some disgruntled retiree. He was connected. Emily's intel confirmed the agency's suspicions. Her mission was no longer just surveillance. It had shifted to takedown. The very next day, a black SUV with no plates pulled up to our curb. A woman in a tailored black suit stepped out and introduced herself as Agent Ross. She spoke with Emily, behind closed doors for nearly an hour. When they emerged, Ross turned to me. "Your daughter is extraordinary," she said. "She's been upgraded to active field status, effective immediately." That's when it became real. This wasn't a game. This wasn't a school project. My daughter was an operative. Over the next few days, our house transformed subtly. Devices were installed. Encrypted comms tested. Every signal Talbot sent out was intercepted, logged. One morning, Emily handed me a pebble-sized device. "What is it?" I asked. "A bug," she said. "He installed it under our mailbox last night." That was the final piece. 48 hours later, Talbot vanished, arrested, quietly, no flashing lights, no news vans. The neighborhood received a letter a week later. He'd moved to Florida to be closer to family. No one asked questions. A new HOA president was elected. Carla. She was kind, young, refreshingly human. She waved when she saw us. Listened. The neighborhood began to breathe again. But Emily? She changed. She was sharper now, always scanning, eyes picking apart conversations like puzzles. I caught her watching people. Not like a teen watching drama, but like a specialist reading profiles. One night I asked, "Do you ever wish you could just be a normal kid?" She thought for a long moment. "Sometimes," she said softly. "But once you know what people like Talbot are doing, you realize normal isn't safe. Someone has to watch the watchers." I nodded. "Just don't get caught again, okay?" She smiled, tight-lipped, almost mischievous. That was the plan, from the beginning. Then she pulled up her hood, slipped out the door, and vanished into the dark like she belonged to it. Just another teenager. Just another mission. And me? I'll never see picket fences the same way again, because now I understand. Behind the trimmed hedges, the porch lights, and neighborly waves, real danger hides in plain sight. And sometimes it's the quietest person, the one taking out the trash, who's actually holding the key to everything. The days that followed were quiet, not peaceful. Quiet, like the kind of silence that fills a room after someone has screamed. The kind that buzzes in your ears, tense and waiting. Cedar Pines carried on as if nothing had happened. Lawns were mowed. Trash cans rolled to the curb. Wind chimes clinked gently in the breeze. But under it all, you could feel it. Something had changed. Nobody talked about Talbot. Not once. His name became a ghost. The story floated around that he'd moved to Florida to be closer to his sister. But no one really believed it. They just pretended to, because pretending was safer. And Emily? She didn't slow down. One night, I found her in the garage, sitting cross-legged on top of an old toolbox building something small and black that looked like a flashlight. She was soldering with surgical precision. "What is that?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. She didn't look up. "Dual-frequency camera, homemade. The agency issued one has a blind spot." Why would you need that? I asked. What? Kind of blind spot? Not all transmitters operate on the same band, she said flatly, and Carla's bracelet isn't just for style. Carla, the friendly new HOA president, the one who waved, who listened, who made people feel like things were finally normal again. I felt a chill ripple across my arms. You think she's… I don't think. I observe, Emily replied, finally glancing up. And something about her pattern doesn't match. No digital footprint until 3 years ago. Too clean. Too… planted. That night, I barely slept. Again. By the third day, I realized something important. Emily didn't belong to this world anymore. She wasn't tethered to sleepovers or biology exams or prom invitations. She moved in a different orbit now. One built of dead drops, encrypted networks, and coded language. A world where the enemy didn't wear a uniform, where they might live next door, wave from the sidewalk, offer to watch your dog when you're out of town. Later that week, I caught her scanning cellular tower logs on her laptop, her eyes darting, over lines of raw data. I sat down across from her. Are there others like you? I asked quietly. She paused for the briefest second, then nodded. Dozens, she said, all over the country, some embedded in families like ours, others in boarding schools, group homes, international academies, different missions, same protocol, ghosts among civilians. The weight of her words sank in slowly. And how long will you be doing this? I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. She looked up. Depends how deep it goes. Then, just like that, she turned the screen toward me. See this IP cluster? All routing through Cedar Pines, but the source is bouncing from 7 different HOA-managed networks across the state. Whatever Talbot was running, he wasn't running it alone. The following week, we began noticing things. Subtle things. A new neighbor moved in across the street, mid-30s, military haircut, no kids, no visible job. A white SUV with government plates parked at the end of the block 2 nights in a row, windows tinted too dark to be casual. And then there were the drones. Quiet, barely audible, but Emily noticed the flight patterns. Too precise, too frequent. They're watching us now, she said one morning, casually, like she was talking about the weather. We kicked the hornet's nest. Now they're checking for cracks in the hive. You mean, the agency? She shook her head. Not mine. Not the good guys. It was the first time she'd referred to the agency with a distinction. The good guys. Which meant there were others. And suddenly it was clearer than ever. This wasn't just about Talbot anymore. This was layered, fragmented. Rogue agencies, shadow players, parallel systems of control hiding behind legitimate seals and logos. I started checking the locks twice, then 3 times. Emily didn't just work late, she disappeared for hours at a time, into the woods behind the subdivision where cell signals faded and she could speak freely to handlers via encrypted comms embedded in a gutted wristwatch. She came home muddy, tired, and sharper than ever. Then, one night, she said something I'll never forget. We found Carla's uplink. We were sitting in the backyard. The crickets had gone silent. She's not local, Emily said, her voice low. We traced the signal to an underground relay buried near the community pool pump station. Shielded, not amateur stuff. She's feeding data to a network that doesn't register on federal maps. What kind of data? Behavioral, movement patterns, purchase logs, surveillance footage from doorbell cams synced through HOA servers. She's cataloging people. Not just here, but in 5 other communities linked to this pilot. And why? She didn't answer right away. She looked up at the stars. Because someone's trying to build a predictive model, she finally said. Not just to watch people, but to know what they'll do next, and control it. That's when I stopped breathing for a second. You mean, like mind control? No, Emily replied. Worse. influence without detection, behavioral conditioning, quiet nudges, content filtering, subtle penalties for disobedience, silent rewards for compliance. They're shaping people, I whispered. She nodded. And they're starting with the people least likely to notice. Homeowners in peaceful neighborhoods, people who trust rules, who crave order. It's the perfect test group. It was all too much, too big. I felt like I was drowning in it, but not Emily. She stood up and stretched like she was preparing for another all-nighter. "Tomorrow," she said, "we're going in." "In where?" "The clubhouse, behind the HOA office. There's a tunnel access point under the foundation. Carla thinks no one knows about it." She gave me a tired smile. "She's wrong. She's wrong," Emily repeated, her voice a low echo against the wooden fence. Then she turned and walked inside, her silhouette briefly framed by the porch light before vanishing into the shadows of our home. That night, I didn't sleep, not for lack of trying. I lay there, still, eyes fixed. On the ceiling, heart beating in my throat. The neighborhood had never been quieter, and yet I had never been more aware of its hidden noise. The gentle hum of electricity, the whir of distant surveillance drones, the occasional flicker of lights in windows I had assumed were empty. The illusion of cedar pines was cracking. At 3:11 a.m., I finally got up and found Emily at the kitchen table. Blue light from her laptop flickered across her face. Her eyes were locked on a series of encrypted windows, spreadsheets, thermal maps, digital architectural diagrams overlaid with red notations. "I've mapped it out," she said without looking up. "The tunnel begins beneath the old maintenance, access behind the clubhouse. They buried it during the last renovation. On paper, it doesn't exist anymore." "But it does?" I asked. "Oh, it exists," she said, her tone surgical. "It connects to a data node below the foundation. That's where they're storing hard copies, physical drives, backups, off-cloud, off-grid, which means even the agency couldn't trace it unless someone walked in with eyes." "You mean you?" Emily looked up. "Us." I froze. "What?" "You're coming with me," she said. "I can't do it alone. 2 sets of eyes. One watches the door. One pulls the data. We're in and out before sunrise." I didn't argue, not because I wasn't terrified, but because deep down, I knew she was right. I had spent too long as a passive observer in this story, a background character. That wasn't going to be enough anymore, not when people like Talbot had guns, networks, and legal camouflage, not when they were using neighborhoods like ours as experiments. So, that night, I followed my daughter into the dark. We left just after 4 a.m. No streetlights in Cedar Pines. Talbot had fought to keep it that way, citing light pollution. That now worked in our favor. We wore black. No phones. Just 2 small utility flashlights, a pair of gloves, and one of Emily's custom-built comlinks, a low-range signal scrambler disguised as a key fob. The clubhouse sat like a sleeping giant at the far end of the cul-de-sac. It had always seemed so harmless. White columns, plastic Adirondack chairs, fake brick facade. But under the moonlight, it looked different, heavier, like it knew it was hiding something. We circled around to the back, past the locked pool gate, and reached the old maintenance hatch, disguised under a gravel patch Emily had already cleared days ago. With silent precision, she pried open the steel access lid and pulled out a narrow ladder, worn and rusted. "You go first," she said. I hesitated, then lowered myself into the cold, dark earth, the silence pressing in from every direction. The air was damp, metallic. My fingers trembled as I gripped the ladder's rungs. Emily followed, sealing the hatch above us. We dropped into an underground corridor, a narrow tunnel barely wide enough for one person at a time. The floor was concrete. The walls were older than the neighborhood itself, likely part of whatever infrastructure the land once hosted before Cedar Pines was built. 10 minutes in, we reached a sealed iron door. Emily knelt beside it, cracked open, her backpack, and pulled out what looked like a small folding mirror with a fiber optic cable, I'll scope the other side, she whispered. She fed the cable under the door, pulled up a tiny screen from her wristband, and watched. I watched her, and for the first time, I realized something brutal and beautiful. This was no longer a teenage girl improvising in her suburban backyard. Emily was trained, precise, calculated. She was field-ready, and this world, however terrifying, fit her like a second skin. "It's clear," she said. For now, the lock took her 90 seconds to pick. Inside, the room opened into a strange cross between a server farm and a bomb shelter. The walls were lined with servers, blinking with dull orange lights. No ventilation, no chairs, just racks, wiring, silence. Emily pulled out a drive and plugged it into the central terminal. As data streamed, the screen filled with names, hundreds, thousands, names of homeowners across the state, categorized by race, voting records, financial data, even therapy history scraped from health apps. Everything. Tagged. "They're building a behavior index," Emily muttered, "sorting people into risk categories. Not for crimes, for potential. Psychological profiling. If you fit their model, you're marked. If you deviate, you're flagged." I felt sick. What do they do with the people they flag? They start with fines, then pressure, social isolation, HOA notices, threats, and eventually they disappear. She looked at me. Like the Garcias. Remember them? The Garcias. A young couple. Kind, friendly, gone in the middle of the night 8 months ago. We were told they'd relocated for work. Emily tapped into another file. Their faces were there, alongside timestamps, GPS data, and an internal memo marked Phase 3, Relocation Neutralization. My knees buckled. "This is bigger than surveillance," I whispered. "It's social engineering." "No," Emily said. "It's targeted erasure. The system's already live. I'm pulling everything. I can before they wipe it." That's when the alarm triggered. A low, pulsing hum. Not loud, but terrifying in its finality. Emily yanked the drive. "Time's up. We have 60 seconds, maybe less." We ran. Up the tunnel, out the hatch, through backyards and across gardens. The sun hadn't yet risen, but we could already hear the whir of distant drones, closer this time. Something was awake now. Something aware. We burst through our front door, gasping. Behind us, Cedar Pines still slept. Emily uploaded the drive through a secured uplink by dawn. By midday, she was gone, pulled from the field and taken to a safe house for debriefing. I watched the SUV drive away, her face barely visible behind tinted glass. She didn't wave. She didn't need to. She knew I understood now. Later that week, the clubhouse caught fire. Electrical short, they said. Total loss. Carla vanished. Family emergency, the email said. A new interim president was appointed, a man in his 60s who loved gardening and couldn't spell surveillance if you spotted him the first 9 letters. And me? I go for walks now. I listen more. I watch everything. Every flicker, every blink of a porch cam, every car that parks just a second too long. I water my lawn. I wave at neighbors. I play the part. But I don't see this place the same way. Because I know now what lives behind fences and manicured lawns. I know what can be hidden under a trash bag, what can be built beneath a clubhouse, and I know what a teenager, just one, can expose if she's brave enough to open her eyes.